This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granic Allen. As we begin 2026, the crisis in Venezuela has become one of the most profound humanitarian and geopolitical dramas in the Western Hemisphere. Once among Latin America's wealthiest nations, thanks to vast oil wealth, Venezuela today is a nation marked by economic collapse, widespread poverty, and mass migration. Years of mismanagement, corruption, and concentrated political control under Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro helped shrink the economy by more than 80%, compared to with a decade ago, leaving millions struggling to afford food, medicine, clean water, and basic services. Nearly 8 million have fled abroad in search of work and safety, creating one of the largest displacement crises in the world. For ordinary Venezuelans, the human cost has been severe. Nearly two-thirds of the population lives in extreme poverty, access to healthcare and education has been deteriorated, and essential infrastructure from electricity to potable water remains unreliable, or broken. Independent human rights groups report erosion in civic freedoms, political repression, and continuing abuses against dissidents, and that's important to note. So, against that backdrop of suffering and dysfunction, the United States has taken an increasingly assertive role. For years, Washington imposed a complex web of sanctions targeting Venezuela's oil sector, government officials, and state assets, aiming to pressure the Maduro regime and support democratic opposition. In late 2025 and early 2026, those tensions escalated dramatically. US forces conducted a military operation that led to the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and intensified an oil blockade and seized tankers tied to Venezuelan trade and established a new strategic posture in the region, all of which has drawn both praise and condemnation internationally. So, to help us unpack what is happening on the ground, what Venezuelans themselves are experiencing, and what the future might hold, I'm joined today by Ana Rizo, lawyer and president of Ladies of Liberty Alliance Canada, who has been speaking out about the hardships facing everyday Venezuelans caught between repression at home and geopolitical contest abroad. Ana, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry about what's happening in Venezuela, and I'm really grateful to have your insight here.
Thank you for having me in your show and for providing this space to learn about what is going on with Venezuela right now.
Absolutely, because many Canadians are ignorant. We just know what's happening in news headlines, but we need to get beyond the headlines. So, when we hear about Venezuela in the news, what do most people misunderstand about the daily life of Venezuelans and the ordinary people living there?
I think that what most of people misunderstand is that they believe that Venezuela or they feel empathy towards Venezuelans because, oh, look, they have a US intervention or they were invaded by Trump and things like that. And the reality, and this is something that I have been very clear about, most of Venezuelans were even waiting for this intervention.
So, just
And
to
when
be
I mean
clear,
most of Venezuelans,
yeah, I
yes,
was going to say, just to be clear, most Venezuelans were waiting for the US to intervene. They were welcoming it.
yes,
Okay, because that's a different narrative
yes.
than we hear, right?
Absolutely. It's completely different. And when I mention that, I don't only mean people like me from the diaspora, I mean people back home. I mean my parents, for example. I mean my friends who were back home. And something that you will see from the few videos that we're able to capture what happened on January 3rd is that when they dropped the bombs that were dropped on government official buildings, like places that were military bases of the government. They didn't bomb any civilian area. That's very important to keep it clear. And what you hear is people actually clapping their hands or being like, "Oh my God, finally it's happening!" Like people actually they weren't scared, but at the same time they were excited. If you think about it. And
Right.
the reason is because of that, because Venezuelans were actually like desperate to get rid of Maduro already.
So we only have 30 seconds before commercial, but most uprisings occur at the grassroots. The people themselves uprise. Here, in this case, a foreign government came in and intervened. Why haven't the Venezuelan people been successful at uprising in the last several years?
We have been uprising. We did it last year with the result of the elections. We did it in 2014. We did it in 2017. We
Mhm.
have done it during the years. But, I can continue that because our segment is over, but that's a very important point I want to discuss.
Okay, we'll pick this up in just a few moments.